So over the many years that many of us have been on YouTube, you've heard about drip irrigation, and I've placed up, some short tutorials in regards to drip irrigation. However, sometimes we fail to forget that many of us have different learning abilities and learning styles. So I'm going to introduce you to my drip irrigation setup, and I'm going to introduce you to the working components and how to actually install one right here on this channel. And I hope that this helps you folks, or at least inspire many of you to see how simple and easy it is to install drip irrigation into your edible landscape so that you could cut your time in the garden down. Oftentimes the heat can get very, very harsh on an individual, especially if you're someone who have certain disabilities or ailments, and someone who possibly may be taking medication, which makes you more sun sensitive. So I'm going to share this with you folks, and I hope to reach a lot of you, and hopefully you're motivated to go to your local nursery, garden center, big box stores, and get the necessary components you need in order to build such a system. You can also look in my Amazon link below this video, and you will be able to purchase an entire kit less than $100, and many times less than $50, depending on what your needs are. So let's get started, and I'm going to share with you first up the components. So let's get started with the various components that you may need, and in this video, what I use for my setup. Let's go. Alrighty, let's go ahead and step in here, and we're going to look at a list of products here that you're going to need in order to make sure that you have a proper drip system. The first thing we're going to start with is this poly tubing. This poly tubing come in 25 feet, 50 feet, 100 feet, and for special orders up to 500 feet, even more when used by a professional gardener. Now there's a secondary type of poly tubing, and it looks like this. However, this is the secondary of his bigger brother. This type of tubing has a bigger brother that's got the same circumference as this tubing, but the holes are spaced every 12 inches apart. With the smaller poly tubing, the holes, as you see here, are spaced every 6 inches apart, maybe 8 inches at the most. So depending on your setup, you're going to use a particular hose according to your application. So remember again, we're going to want to make sure we grab poly tubing. It's very important that you know how much square footage you're dealing with. And if you're dealing with raised beds, well, I'll tell you this right now, the best tubing to use will be the bigger brother of this tubing, because you're normally going to space your plants every 12 inches apart. If you're going to grow flowers in that particular area, then you'll want to use a soaker hose. A soaker hose is very important. And the reason it's important is quite simple. Let's visit the soaker hose just briefly. Now, here's a soaker hose. Now I want you to pay very close attention to this name. And if you're looking for this hose, you can pick this up on my Amazon store in my affiliate links in the description below. Now, the soaker hose, what it's going to allow, if you're building a flower bed, or you have even your strawberries, if you have them in a row, you don't always have to use drippers, because that can become very cumbersome. However, snaking your soaker hose throughout your area is going to release water from the hose. There's little pores all over this hose, and it allows water to leak from it slower over a long period. You're saving a lot of water, may I remind you. And guess what? you'll never have to worry about watering your plants. You see, sometimes when having some sort of arrangement, depending on what it is, soaker hose is just the way to go. It's going to get that consistent and constant water to the roots of the plants without being wasted in a hot, humid summers where, typically if you're watering by hand, most of the water evaporates. Well, soaker hose is going to stop that. So let's get back to the list here, okay? So now that we've gone over your polytubing and your soaker hose, the next components to set up your drip irrigation are going to be your brains. You need your brains. The brains is very important. Now, they sell quite a few of different varieties of these through many different companies. You have to find one that suits you. Now, I'm very new to this particular brand, but I'll show you a brand that I love, and it's made by Gilmour, and we'll visit that area in just a second. But you're gonna need a brain. This is gonna be your main attachment to your spigot, and you're gonna have two separate units. This is one side watering with your water hose. You flip that switch down, and you can water your plants manually. Over here, this is gonna hook up to your drip irrigation. This is either gonna go to your spigot or to what I like to use is a filtering system. I'll show you that. Now, here are some components. This is a filtering system. And this is what I like to hook up to my spigot. This opening right here, and you simply twist it onto your spigot. And we're gonna go over this setup, so be patient with me. And from here, we're gonna take this unit and we're gonna go here. You see the difference now? Let's get a wider angle so you folks could really see this. How about that? Just like so. Okay, spigot, here's your hookup right here. Now, there's some other things you want to make sure of. Now, you notice I have this end here. You can see this is a polytubing end, a 3/8. And here's another filter style component right here. Now, I like to use this, and you don't have to because I already have this filtering system, okay? So what I like to do is once I hook this up to my spigot, and I hook this one up to the filtering system, just like so. From the brains, I now take this and I put it here. And then I go ahead and connect my polytubing. So my polytubing is going to end up in here. Now, for some of you, it's going to be difficult to squeeze this in there. Here's what I suggest. Get you a blow dryer or heat gun. Put it on low, and you want to soften this material up. You can push it right in. It's quite easy. Once you got it in here, you can move about. Now, there's going to be some occasions where you may find yourself having to twist and turn things. So that's where you're going to have one of these. It's called a L shape. I like to call it a V because it looks like a V, right? But then again, L shape. You're going to need one of these attachments here. Okay? And sometimes you may end up finding yourself having to tee things off. And in that case, you're going to use this adapter. Polytubing, polytubing, polytubing. That's going to allow you to run your line and tee it off if you have several different lines of plants that you like to use. So let's go ahead and look at some of the other components. Now, these are little spikes. And although you may purchase some drip heads, such as these, that have a little spike on the end, I tend to like these spikes a lot better. So much so. Okay? Let's see if I can get that a better look for you here. All right. And here's that dripper head. It's going to release water 360 degrees, and you can adjust as necessary. These I like to use when I have two plants sitting on side of each other inside of a container that I'm growing, such as edibles. And that way I can put this in the middle and they can both get the required amount of water that they need. Otherwise, I use this particular device here. Now, let me share with you how this works. Now, here are your drip lines, and your drip line will simply go over the red end, and the water will pour out from this end. Let's get a little closer. It'll go over the red end, and the water will pour out from this end. So I use this for a single individual plant. Okay? No water splatters, which is very important if you're trying to keep the water off your leaves, reducing disease. Okay? Now, if you're going to use one of these drippers here, same difference. This is going to go right on here. All right? So let's go ahead and put that dripper down. We're going to put this drip head back in here. Now, there's one thing to please, you got to make note. You just can't attach this to a line and just sit it on the soil. You got to stabilize it so that the water can go directly towards the plant. So here's what I do. I buy this bag here, and these are called 6-inch support stakes. You see that name right there? Okay. Now, we're going to go over here really quick because I totally forgot that. These are drippers, and the code number is 06016. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to take one of these here. We're then going to take our line. Let's get our line here. We're going to take it and we're going to push this directly on here. Get it snugged on there. And we're going to take this right here and we're going to click it right there. Or you can put it down to make sure it's, it's good, but you don't want to pinch it. The further you go down, you're going to pinch this line, thus reducing water pressure. So then you're going to go here and you're going to angle it towards the plant like so. So let's get in a little closer. So as you can see here, it's right angled towards the plants. No water splatter. This device here, this support stake, is going to hold it in place. And then you're going to take the end here, right here, and you're going to tap into your existing line. Let me give you an understanding of what that's like. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this poly tubing we had earlier. But in order to get that line in here, I'm going to use similar to what we call a hole puncher. And you got that little metal here that comes down as you push. Well, they make about several different varieties. Here's another one here. And you simply push. Let me show you. It's my least favorite because you really got to have this angled and really drive it in there. You see what happens there? That's why I switch from these, especially if the tubing is very soft. Okay, so there we are. But let's try this one, which is my favorite. We're going to zoom out a little bit more here. So all I'm going to do is going to put it on like this. Watch it now. I want you to get a good look at this. There you go. There's my hole. See? Alrighty, so let's move along. So now that we've gone over those components, just for a moment, you see those white spots over my face? Once again, I'm going to lift my umbrella. Normally I have this umbrella on a tripod, but I figured I'd show you today because many of you asked me, how do you get your videos so smooth without having sunlight reflected in your face? Now you know. You don't have to have this in the video. You can simply have a secondary party lift it up out of the way. As long as it's blocking that sun. See the difference? See the difference? Now you understand. But try holding your hand up like this for 30 minutes. It doesn't work. So I'm going to hold it this way. So let me go ahead and share with you a system that I've already devised. And I'm going to go over those components. And I'm going to go over my favorite timer, the brains of the operations. And then we're going to manually install one just for you. Are you ready? Let's go. Look a little bit like Mary Poppins, don't I? And so here we are here. As you can see, this setup is already complete. So you see that filter unit that I was speaking about. You want to attach that to your spigot. And then from the filter unit, you want to attach the brains of the operations. This is your control unit. This is my favorite unit, made by Gilmour. You can look in the description below my video and find the link that'll take you to my Amazon affiliate store. This unit allows you to run 2 separate polytubing lines. Now, the filter to the brains. From the brains, you're going to use a specific device like this. See that filter in there? You don't have to use this because you already have this filter to make sure there's nothing going to get and clog this filter, yet alone your lines, okay? However, I like to use it just in case something very small and minute get past things. So here it is. So I ran this here on both ends. Now you'll notice that I also ran a small piece of poly tubing. You can see it here. It goes only so far up in here. And then I took one of these L shape or V shape, whichever one you want to call it, and I connected it here. And then ran poly tubing completely on down. Okay? So you're going to use, probably depending on your setup, for me I had to use quite a few of these. And there's another one here, and then it runs out along the side here. Okay? And so that's pretty much. So let's move along, and I'm going to show you folks how to naturally set this up. I'm going to manually set one up so you folks could get a better look at how to do this. It's quite simple. So before we get started, you'll notice there's a lot of wind, and I apologize in advance. Here's my spigot. Now I've recently had all of my spigots replaced throughout the exterior of my home. So once again, here's that filter. Now what we're going to do is we're simply going to take this in and we're going to twist it on here. It's quite simple. Make sure that's straight as possible. And then from this point here, we're going to take our timer here. And sometimes the sort of rotation doesn't work well. So what I do is I twist the entire component. And I get it to where I would like it to be. There we go. Okay? So there we are. From this point, we're going to use this special filter we talked about earlier. This guy with the blue filter in there. Let me take that out so you can have a closer look. Doesn't look like it want to come out. We'll go ahead and leave it for now. But I'm going to take this and place it here. But before I place it here, okay, what I want to make sure I do is go ahead and take the poly tubing and get it inside. Now you notice I already have a duplicate here, right there. So I'm going to now take this in and I'm going to twist it on. Give it a nice snug tight, and make sure there's no kinks, okay? So this area is completely set up and done. It's in the off position now. On this particular controller, I have a how often, how long, start time, set clock, and auto for rain delay. So it'll sense rain and it'll automatically shut down, okay? Now, here's another thing also. I'm gonna show you how to set this in just a moment. So let's go ahead and go to my drip lines and we're going to start installing drip lines. Let's go. In the meantime, we have our hose here, and I'm simply going to attach it to this unit right here. This is not a unit that allows me to run two lines. It's a unit that allows me to run one drip irrigation line and the other line to a hose so I can water. Okay, we're all done here. And before we get started, you can see the line that comes out, and it comes along the back end here. And this line travels behind all of my wine barrels. And when it comes here, I simply keep enough of it, and I use this particular part here. You notice that these two particular parts are completely different. Here's a filter, polytubing on here, and this one closes off. And it does this so that water can't continue. See the difference here? So let's get started. So as you can see, here's the polytubing. And I've already taken the line and placed one of these spikes in it. So we're going to go ahead and go down here. I'm going to take my trusty tubing, and I want to get this as close to the back as I possibly can. So although you can't see that hole there, I'm going to go ahead and snap it in here. There we go. That's completely installed. And here's the line running up. So I've got many more lines. Let's get started. So I've installed one line. I have roughly 8 more to go. We'll be back. We'll start the system. But before I do that, I'm going to share with you how to set your timer, how often you should set it for your herbs. And we'll check and see if the system works. If everything pans out, no more watering by hand. You can be rest assured that your plants will get the requirement of water that they need. Let's get to it. So now we're back at the entire timer. We're going to go ahead and manually set this. And I apologize in advance again if you hear a lot of wind turbulence. Now, you'll notice that we have an off, how often, how long, start time, set clock, and auto for rain. What we need to talk about here first, though, is what time to set this so that my plants get watered. Because you don't want the time to interfere with the other timers that you may have in your garden that water other plants. Because if it interferes, you're going to get less water pressure. Probably not a big deal in some cases, but nevertheless, you want to make sure that the time, if this is going to be set to 5, you want to make sure that your other timer is set to 5:30. Then the next one may be set to 6, and then 6:30. You get where I'm going, right? Okay, so we're going to set this one to 4 a.m. And so right now we're going to work around the clock in reverse. Instead of clockwise, we're going to go counterclockwise. So how often do I want my herbs watered? Well, since they're newly planted, I want them watered every other day. So here's, you see 1 days. I'm going to push this button. 2 days, every other day. 3 days. That's what we have right here. And then it states how long. I only want them watered for approximately 5 minutes. That's enough. And then we see start time. So we got 5:30 a.m. here. We're going to take this top button here We're going to go backwards because I want it at 4:30 a.m. Right there, 4:30 a.m. And then set clock. We already know what that is. We're going to go here, okay, to auto. This is where you set it. Now, we're going to test our system. We're going to put it on a manual test. Now, when you push manual, you want to make sure that, first of all, make sure that your spigot is open. Okay? And so let's go ahead and open the spigot up. Counterclockwise. All the way. Now we want to water or turn the water on manually just to make sure the system is properly working. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to push manual right here. Okay? And then it says 10 minutes. I'm going to go to 5 minutes. Just to give me a little headway if I'm still talking to you folks. I'm going to push this button again, right? And turn it off. That's how you stop manual. So let's go ahead and go manual. Remember, down, up will increase, plus will increase, minus will decrease. So we're going to go to 5 and we're going to leave it right there. And you're going to hear a click. You hear that? The water is flushing. Let's go and check the system now. So as you see along my alleyway, I have 9 wine barrels. Here's the first sage here. Let's check it. The water's good. The water's good, but these plants are not that large. We're going to adjust this and turn this down. Now that's more like it. Let's walk over here. Always want to check. The water's good. Let's walk here. The water's good. This water is spreading wildly. Let's go ahead and adjust that. Okay, they're adjusted perfectly now. Let's go over here. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Let's go here. Perfect. And let's go here. We got to adjust this. Much better. And let's check the last one here. We'll adjust that one just a little bit. We want it to go right there at the root zone. And so I'm going to just slightly move this. And perfect. Look at that. Well, did I make it simple for you folks? I hope it helped. I mean, I did go through a lot of different clips to edit this. Actually, I don't mind. I just hope that you folks find this very beneficial. I do want you to always try and lessen the labor in the garden. Not that labor is a bad thing. I actually love laboring in the garden. But when it comes to certain things, if we can cut our time back, it makes a huge difference because then we have time for other things, like time for the Father. Other than that, just know if you're looking for any of these parts, you can find a drip system kit in my Amazon link. I'll put it right below so it can take you directly to it. You can also find the actual timer and some other items as well. Until then, you folks take good care of yourselves. I'm going to get to walking, at least for now.